Welcome to the debate. Every day, thousands of complete beginners, pay $500 or more for online business courses that they will literally never, ever finish.
Yeah, it's a pretty depressing cycle to watch.
It really is. They buy these programs hoping for a shortcut to financial freedom, but then they just hit a wall of technical jargon and paralyzing self-doubt by week 2.
Right.
The course creator keeps the money, the student keeps their day job, and the cycle just continues. But today we are looking at a system that claims to reverse that exact risk, by actually financially penalizing the creator if the student puts in the work and fails.
Which is a bold premise for sure, and one that forces us to really re-examine how we value educational frameworks in the creator economy.
Exactly. That hits on what we need to figure out today. We are evaluating the genuine viability and really the financial logic of high-tech digital product creation systems.
Specifically through the lens of a highly detailed 2026 review of Jason Fladlian's Product eClass 5.0.
Precisely. It's a highly scrutinized piece of source material in an industry that honestly desperately requires scrutiny. So the central question we must frame today is this. Is the special offer price of $499 a justified, mathematically sound investment for a true beginner?
Or is it merely an overpriced barrier to entry, right? Especially in an era where information is overwhelmingly free on YouTube and through AI.
Exactly. And my position today is that the $499 price tag warrants deep, deep skepticism, especially along with the assumption that complete novices can overcome massive technical and expertise hurdles.
Well, my position is that evaluating the $499 as a mere cost for information fundamentally misunderstands the mechanism of this specific program.
How so?
The methodology and the unprecedented guarantee structure systematically de-risk the investment. It frames it less like a theoretical course and more as a protected business acquisition.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. When we look at this $499 price point, which, by the way, the material notes is a special offer down from the standard public price of $999.95, we really have to look at what is historically being sold in this space.
Sure, the space has a reputation.
Right? High-ticket courses frequently sell brilliant theoretical frameworks. They look phenomenal on a whiteboard, but they fail catastrophically upon execution by the end user.
That is fair.
If a listener is hearing about building a digital empire from scratch, their scam radar is naturally going to be going off. The program promises a path to creating and selling information products online.
It does.
But can a complete novice realistically overcome the twin hurdles of having zero established expertise and lacking the technical setup to run advanced systems? I'd argue that the price tag acts as a massive toll booth, leading to a very steep, unpaved road.
Well, I come at it from a completely different way. If we were discussing a theoretical framework launched yesterday by some unknown creator, your skepticism would be entirely warranted. I'd be right there with you.
Okay, but
wait, the source material establishes empirical data we simply cannot ignore. Product eClass is not new. It has a 15-year track record. It has literally been running since 2010 across 5 distinct iterations.
15 years is a long time. I'll grant you that.
Exactly. Over 10,000 students have enrolled. Evaluating $499 in a vacuum ignores that massive legacy of refinement.
But you're still paying for information, right?
No, you aren't paying for the novelty of the information. You are paying for the systematic removal of variables that usually cause beginners to quit. The course is built from the ground up, assuming the user has no prior product, no audience, and zero technical skills.
All right. Let's test that proposition by looking directly at the valuation of the program and its bonuses. Because I have to admit, this is where my skepticism really peaks.
Okay, let's look at the numbers.
The material states that alongside the 7 core curriculum sessions, there's a claimed $14,019.95 in documented bonus value included for that $499.
That's right.
I have to ask, is this akin to buying a $500 bicycle and being told the complimentary air in the tires is worth $10,000?
The air in the tires?
Yes. We see this inflationary marketing everywhere online. 101 killer product topics valued at $388. Or, AI product creation secrets at $527. Are these just inflated, made-up numbers to create a false sense of urgency? Because to me, it just looks like a way to overwhelm the buyer's critical thinking.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. If these were simply like PDFs of generic advice or motivational audio files, I would agree with your bicycle analogy 100%.
But what are they then?
Let's examine the specific mechanics of these bonuses outlined in the review. We have 3 products with resale rights valued at $7,500. This is not complimentary air. This is the bicycle itself.
How so? Walk me through the actual mechanics of that specific bonus. What is the beginner actually receiving?
The material specifies that you are given 3 of Jason Fladlian's own established, proven digital products to sell. But crucially, it includes the complete sales funnels.
Meaning the web pages and everything?
Exactly. And the student is allowed to keep 100% of the profits immediately.
Let's really define what that means. In the digital product space, having a good product is only about, 10% of the battle.
Right, getting the sale is the hard part.
The other 90% is the sales funnel. It's a psychological sequence of web pages, the specific copywriting, the email follow-ups that actually convince a total stranger to pull out their credit card. That infrastructure is by far the hardest part for a beginner to build. Okay, handing someone a pre-built funnel where they keep all the profits, that is a real asset. I'll definitely give you that.
By handing over proven products and the exact web pages used to sell them, the student has commercial inventory on day one, before they even create a single thing themselves. That has tangible standalone commercial value.
Fair enough. But what about the consultation with Jason bonus, which is supposedly valued at $2,500? I mean, it's just a 30-minute private Zoom call.
It is.
And the material itself lists this under honest limitations, noting that it is contractually tied to generating $10,000 in product sales and claiming it within 90 days.
Right.
Let's be real here. Most beginners will absolutely not hit $10,000 in sales in their first 3 months. It feels like a carrot dangled just out of reach, simply to justify a high valuation on the sales page.
That is a compelling argument, honestly. But have you considered what tying it to that metric actually achieves? It proves the bonus isn't fluff, it's highly protected time.
How does gating it make it less fluffy?
Because the material explicitly states that Jason values these calls to dissect successful campaigns with action takers. Think about it. If he gave a 30-minute consultation to every single one of the 10,000 students on day one, the entire business model would collapse under the weight of scheduling.
Well, obviously he couldn't do that.
Right. So by gating it behind a $10,000 success metric, it establishes 2 vital things. First, the $2,500 valuation is mathematically realistic for the time of someone whose webinars have generated $250 million in sales.
And the second thing?
Second, it serves as a powerful psychological anchor for the student. It is a reward for execution, not just a participation trophy for buying the course.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it differently. Even if the bonuses hold up to scrutiny as genuine assets, the core curriculum still demands execution from the student.
Of course it does.
And this brings me to my biggest hangup. Let's examine Session 1, which introduces the foundational 1-1-1 formula. 1 problem, 1 solution, 1 sitting.
The core philosophy of the program, yeah?
Right. The premise is that the best information products are short, specific, and created quickly. But surely a beginner sitting down to create a product in a single afternoon is going to produce something of incredibly low value?
Not necessarily.
We are in an era where AI can generate a textbook in 10 seconds. How can a complete novice with no domain expertise create something valuable in a single sitting? Won't the market immediately see through a novice trying to pass off surface-level knowledge as a premium solution?
If they were writing a comprehensive encyclopedia on a broad topic, absolutely. The market would reject it immediately.
So you agree the beginner is at a disadvantage?
No, because that is exactly why the 1-1-1 formula works. It is entirely about scoping. Modern buyers aren't paying for overwhelming volumes of information, They are drowning in information.
That's true.
What they will pay for is a highly specific shortcut to a highly specific problem. Instead of a beginner trying to write a 300-page book on how to train your dog, which requires massive expertise, the 1-1-1 formula teaches them to solve one hyper-specific issue.
Like what, for example?
Created in 1 sitting.
Okay, I see the logic in narrowing the scope. But even with a narrow scope, you still have to actually know how to stop the puppy from biting the leash.
True.
You are anticipating my next objection, which is, I am not a dog trainer. The beginner has no expertise. So even if the problem is small, the beginner still has to provide the solution.
And that is exactly the friction point the curriculum solves in the very next module. Session 2 introduces the third-party profit model. I would argue this is the single most critical mechanism in the entire program for a true beginner.
Okay, the material describes this as taking other people's expertise, extracting the real value from it, and turning it into your own product legally and ethically.
Yes,
How exactly does someone do that without just straight up plagiarizing?
because you do not need to be the expert. You act as the synthesizer, the interviewer, the curator. Think about how a journalist operates, right?
Okay, I'm listening.
You find an expert, say, a local dog trainer who is amazing at their job but terrible at marketing. You interview them for an hour about that specific leash biting problem. You transcribe it, organize the steps, and package it as an audio or text guide.
And you just sell it?
You agree to split the profits, or you pay them a flat fee for their time. The material notes that Jason Fladlien recently used this exact method with a company doing over $500 million per year in revenue.
Wait, a $500 million company?
Yes. Think about the implications of that. A 9-figure corporate entity is utilizing the exact same framework being taught to the absolute beginner in Session 2. It entirely neutralizes the "I'm not an expert" objection because your job is no longer to be the source of the knowledge.
Your job is just to package it.
Exactly. Your job is merely to package the solution.
I'm not totally convinced by that line of reasoning, honestly. Because packaging someone else's expertise still requires massive marketing fluency.
It requires some, yes.
Let's say I interview the dog trainer. Let's say I have the product. Having a product sitting on a hard drive is very different from having paying customers. You still have to acquire the traffic.
Of course.
And the source material openly acknowledges that getting traffic and scaling requires advanced tactics. Just look at Session 6, the webinar method.
Ah, the webinars.
Right. The text explicitly states that Jason Fladlien is regarded as the most successful webinar presenter in the world, doing over $250 million. But it also explicitly lists under honest limitations that Session 6 requires significantly more confidence in technical setup.
It's definitely a step up.
It notes that beginners may find it a steep step up. Webinars are highly technical, high-pressure environments. You have to handle live chat, presentation software, broadcasting tools. If the ultimate path to high-level profitability requires running webinars, we are back to my original premise.
Which is?
That the $499 price is just a toll booth leading to a massive technical wall that most people will just crash into.
Well, I don't disagree that Session 6 represents a technical leap. Running a live webinar is an advanced skill, but we must look at the structural sequencing of the course.
Sequencing matters, but it's still in the curriculum.
Right, but the program is 7 sessions delivered over 5 weeks. Session 1 gives you the 1-1-1 formula. Session 2 gives you the third-party profit model.
Okay.
By Session 3, back-end profits, you are learning the psychology of maximizing a single buyer, finding the specific type of information buyer worth 212 times the average customer. By Session 5, you are tweaking products for high-ticket sales.
So you build up to it.
Exactly. You are absolutely not starting with webinars on day 1. The webinar method in Session 6 is the scaling mechanism. It is framed as the fastest path to 7 figures. It is absolutely not the prerequisite for making your first $499 back.
So you are arguing the architecture of the curriculum systematically builds the capital and really the psychological confidence required to eventually execute those harder technical steps.
Precisely. You don't need a live webinar to sell a single-sitting product that solves one specific problem. You use the organic traffic tools provided early in the course.
Or the bonuses.
Right. Or you use the 3 products with resale rights from the bonuses to generate initial cash flow using those pre-built funnels. The program assumes you don't even know how to register a domain name at the start. It walks through setting up the basic technology to take secure payments before ever even mentioning a webinar.
Let us look then at the ultimate mitigation of my skepticism, which is what happens if a student simply fails.
The guarantee.
Exactly.
Because if the barrier to entry is $499 and the student tries this third-party model and just doesn't get traction, which is statistically common in self-paced education, the risk usually falls entirely on the buyer.
That is the industry norm, yes.
Now, the material details a 200% double your money back guarantee. On its face, that sounds like pure internet marketing hyperbole designed to get credit cards out of wallets.
It sounds exactly like hyperbole, yeah.
Until you read the documented, highly specific parameters of how it actually functions in practice.
Well, let me outline those parameters because I look at them and see the basis of another massive limitation. The text states there is a standard 30-day no questions asked refund. That is industry standard, fine.
Right.
But the 200% guarantee requires the student to follow the program, actually create a product, make at least one sale, and attempt to drive traffic daily for 2 weeks, all within a 60-day window.
Those are the steps, yes. Crucially, they must keep a Google Doc of their progress as they go, not retrospectively. If they do all of that and don't make at least double their investment back, which is $998, Jason pays them $998 out of pocket.
It's an incredible offer.
But my pushback here is that the documentation requirements, like maintaining a progressive Google Doc, the daily traffic logging, are intentional friction points. They're designed to disqualify people from the guarantee. It's just a loophole so the creator never actually has to pay out.
I come at it from a completely different angle. Those requirements are not loopholes designed to deny refunds. They are forced behavioral constraints designed to ensure execution.
Forced behavioral constraints?
Yes. Remember how we started this discussion? People buy courses, leave them on their hard drive, and do absolutely nothing. The guarantee essentially says, if you actually do the work for 2 weeks, document your work so we know you tried, and you still fail, I will pay you double.
But why a Google Doc? It just seems like busy work.
Because it creates a verifiable, time-stamped audit trail that proves the student actually clicked the mouse and engaged with the real world. Think about the mathematics of this risk reversal.
Okay, let's hear the math.
If a student pays $499, follows the specific steps, logs their traffic attempts, and fails to generate $998, Jason Fladlian is literally cutting them a check for $998 out of his own pocket.
So he is taking a negative risk position on his own product.
Exactly. The financial risk is mathematically reversed for anyone genuinely willing to execute. If it were a scammy loophole, it wouldn't require basic daily action. It would require some impossible technical feat, like you must run 10 successful live webinars.
Which most beginners couldn't do.
Right. But logging organic traffic daily in a Google Doc for 2 weeks is entirely within the locus of control of an absolute beginner. It requires zero talent. It simply requires discipline.
I see.
The guarantee separates the people who want passive income, which, by the way, their review explicitly states this program is not for, from those willing to actually build a business.
Let's look at where we actually landed here, because this has been a really dense breakdown. My initial perspective was deeply skeptical of the $499 price tag.
Understandably so.
I viewed it as a steep, potentially sunk cost for beginners who I assumed would inevitably drown in technical setup, a lack of personal expertise, and the general noise of the digital product space.
Right.
I looked at the $14,019.95 in bonuses as potential marketing fluff, and I viewed the 111 formula as overly simplistic in an age of AI.
And based on the specific evidence from the review, how was that perspective shifted?
Well, I'll acknowledge that the structural logic behind Product eClass 5.0 is uniquely robust. I am particularly swayed by the third-party profit model, explaining how a beginner can legally curate and package an expert's knowledge completely bypasses the imposter syndrome and expertise gap that I thought was an insurmountable wall.
It's a game changer for beginners.
It really is. Additionally, the pre-built funnels and products with resale rights provide immediate commercial inventory. But most importantly, the 200% guarantee creates a fascinating forced accountability loop.
The negative risk position we talked about.
Right, the math is undeniable. If the methodology fails after the student executes those basic controllable actions, the creator assumes a literal financial loss. That goes far beyond the typical course model.
It does.
However, I do maintain that $499 is a heavy initial toll for a true beginner, and relying on the third-party model or running traffic daily still requires a level of grit, salesmanship, and technical endurance that not everyone possesses, regardless of how good the instructions are.
That is entirely fair.
It's a beautifully mitigated risk, but a risk nonetheless. The barrier to execution still exists.
That is a completely fair assessment. And I think this discussion highlights the value of rigorously interrogating these types of offers, rather than just blindly reading a sales page.
Absolutely.
In an industry flooded with theory, hype, and overnight success promises, the only true metrics are longevity, empirical student results, and the willingness of the creator to actually underwrite the risk.
That makes sense.
15 years of refinement, over 10,000 students, and a system that accounts for the psychological roadblocks of a beginner, that is what validates the investment for those willing to do the work. It is not about buying a secret. It is about buying a framework that has survived contact with reality.
So for the listener who is intrigued by the underlying logic we've unpacked today, where does the source material suggest they begin if they want to evaluate this framework for themselves without necessarily committing that $499 up front?
The review is very clear on this step. Before making any financial commitment, the material directs users to a free 90-minute training hosted by Jason Fladlien himself.
And that's totally free?
Yes, which requires no registration. Listeners can find that directly at jasonfladlienproducteclass.com/free training.
Okay, so they can just go watch it.
Exactly. It allows you to see the methodology, including the 1-1-1 formula and the AI product creation secrets, in action before deciding if the system aligns with your personal risk tolerance and goals.
A logical first step. Well, this has been a deeply clarifying exchange. We always say that multiple perspectives illuminate the full picture, and today was certainly no exception.
Agreed.
We won't declare a definitive winner here, as the ultimate test of any educational system is the execution by the individual.
Exactly. The framework is mechanically sound, but the work remains the responsibility of the student.
Which brings us back to where we started. When you approach the opportunity of a digital business, you have a choice. You can resent the fact that you aren't being handed a fully paved road, or you can pick up the tools, study the map, and recognize that the very act of overcoming those initial hurdles is what builds your equity.
Well said.
The methodology is there. The risk reversal guarantee is in place. The question that lingers is simply this: are you willing to do the actual digging? Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.